Sniper Elite 5 just came out on Game Pass day one, but should you actually take your time to play it? Let's find out. Now, Sniper Elite 5 just came out on Game Pass day one, and I've generally enjoyed the Sniper Elite series, so I was really curious to see how this one either iterated on the previous games or, brought something new to the table. Now, the last few games that I played was Sniper Elite 4 and Zombie Army 4 Dead War, and I really did enjoy these two games, which brings me to the question, should you actually play Sniper Elite 5? Now, inherently, that has two different questions in there, and one is, now with it being on Game Pass, would I play it? And then two, if it weren't on Game Pass, would I actually spend my money on it? So let's dive into those questions and see whether I would actually spend my time and or money on this game. Now, right off the rip, let's start with the fun factor, because obviously, if the game's not any fun to play, then who's going to actually play this thing? So, for the most part, I really did enjoy this game. Now, if you have enjoyed Sniper Elite games in the past, chances are you will enjoy this one as well. But if you have not played any of the Sniper Elite games, then this is obviously going to be the best one to start with. Now, the maps are big. They allow you multiple ways to approach the different scenarios. And in general, it took me between 1 to 3-ish hours, depending on how I actually approached it, whether I went guns blazing or if I took a more stealthy approach. Now, I did run into some technical issues with the game where frame rate would drop. There was some hitching. I even killed a guy and he decided to T-pose at the end, but nothing that was like game breaking. I also did run into some audio issues, which I'll get into here in a little bit, but overall, I did find the game fun. It did kind of scratch that Splinter Cell itch where I wanted something a little bit stealthier that I could approach it from that perspective, and there aren't a lot of games out on the market today, so it did actually fix that itch.
We lost the sub. Did you see any survivors?
We lost some good men.
And that brings me to control and gameplay. Now, story-wise, I'll be candid, I didn't really pay attention to it. The Sniper Elite games don't really have the best stories in my opinion, so I tend to play these purely for the gameplay aspects. But this is also a double-edged sword, because if you're only playing for the gameplay and that gameplay loop gets boring, there's nothing else to really push you forward. So that's something that you want to keep in mind. But overall, I did enjoy the sniping in this game, and for the most part, it has Sniper Elite in the title for a reason, so I really did enjoy that particular gameplay loop. If you have played any third-person shooting game, then you're going to be right at home with this game. It's very similar to any of those other ones, and like I mentioned, I did enjoy the gameplay since it does kind of remind me of Splinter Cell, and like I mentioned, it does kind of cure that itch. So it does add the kill cams for not just the snipers this time around, but also the secondary weapons. So if you're sniping from far away, you can go ahead and get those kill cams, but if you're up close and personal, you can also see them for the pistols, secondary weapons, and also the silent takedowns. Now, the maps themselves are fairly large, a lot larger than they were in the previous games, and you can approach all these different areas however you see fit. Again, guns blazing, if you want to take a more stealthy approach. You can even do a lot more sniping in this particular area. But once you get to your destination, you can run into the different areas. You can be more stealthy, like I mentioned, but you can also be non-lethal if you want to be. So you can go around knocking people out. You can use non-lethal bullets. You can basically leave everybody alive if that's what you wanted to do. Now, you will miss out on a lot of the cool kill cams. So again, it just depends on how you want to approach the gameplay for this game. Now, the enemy AI is just okay for the most part. There were times on lower difficulties where they would just funnel in like lemmings and you just knock them down as they were coming in. But as you start to get into the higher difficulty levels, and especially when you go to authentic, then it gets a lot more difficult, because not only will they not just charge at you and, line up for you to take them out, but especially they'll start to flank you, and then they'll start to do different pincer moves. And then they'll also go through, if you trigger one of those alarms, you're going to get overwhelmed very, very quickly. And you can only do so much in those instances where chances are, especially if you trigger an alarm, you're probably going to die. Now, to help you not die, you have your equipment, you have all your weapons, you have your, grenades and trip mines and all these different things. And the guns themselves, both the rifles, the submachine guns, and the pistols, this time around, they all have attachments, which really allows you to play the game in a different way than you would have in the past. Now, these particular equipment changes allow you to do, long range if you want to stay long range and get the most power without having to really engage up close and personal. you can do that. Or if you want to get up close and personal, you can build like a quick scope for your rifle. It really depends on how you want to approach the game, but there's also an added thing on top of that where you can invest skills into these, or points into these different skills. Now the skills for the most part I would say are just a nice to have. Definitely you want to go after the additional health bonuses, but otherwise a lot of the other skills were just meh. You could literally play the entire game and never spend another point in any of the other skills outside of the health, and you'd be perfectly fine, and chances are you would just end up forgetting that you had points to spend. And next up we have graphics. Now the graphics overall aren't bad, but I wouldn't say they're great either. The game looks very similar to previous iterations within the Xbox One era, as it is a cross-gen game after all. I also had a hard time really telling the difference between the various versions outside of typical things like, resolution, draw distance, lighting, things of that nature. But by and large, the game looks decent. You can definitely tell it's a cross-gen title. It looks a lot like an Xbox One title, so it's not going to win any graphical awards, but it definitely gets the job done. And that brings us to audio. In audio, I don't know, I just have really bad luck when it comes to audio, but audio-wise, overall, the game was actually pretty good for the most part. Gun sounds really good. The gunfire, especially when you have a suppressor on it, actually sounds like the gun is suppressed. It doesn't sound like it does sometimes in the Call of Duty realm where it basically eliminates, sound. It did sound good from a gunplay perspective. The voice acting was also good. The cutscenes served the story if you're actually interested in, which I didn't really care. But overall, audio really did get the job done, and it's there to augment the overall atmosphere, but it's only noticeable when you don't have it. And that actually happened to me again with this title. So an audio bug that I ran into was game loaded, zero sound. Okay, whatever, it happens. I went ahead and reloaded just fine. Now, the other audio issue that I ran into is dealing with stealth kills where the audio would just cut out and then come back after the stealth kill was done. That one happened quite a few times, so I don't know what's going on there, if that was intended or not, but there are some audio issues, but nothing that was actually game-breaking or pulled me fully out of the experience, unless it was the audio bug where there was no audio. And that brings me to replayability. Is this a game that you'll revisit once you beat it? And it's possible, I suppose. Now, there is no New Game Plus for this game. You can go back through and replay different entry points into the different maps, so it gives you a different aspect, but all of this stuff is going to be the exact same. The only other thing is you can increase the difficulty level. There's also an option to go through this game on co-op, which is actually really cool. It's not couch co-op, but you can do co-op in this game. And there's also other aspects that I didn't really have a chance to dive into just because of time constraints, but you do have multiplayer, you do have a survival mode, and you have the ability, kind of like Deathloop, where you can invade other people's games to prevent the person from completing whatever objective that they're going after. Now, for me personally, I don't really see myself revisiting this game after beating it. It was a fun romp, I got some time out of it, but it's not a game I'm going to actively go back and revisit. Which brings me to the point, should you actually spend your time playing Sniper Elite 5? Now, as I mentioned, for me personally, I did enjoy my time with the game. It did kind of scratch that itch for a Splinter Cell type game where it's more stealthy. And it's just, I really miss that kind of stealth aspect for a game. And I really do hope a Splinter Cell comes, sooner than later. Being on Game Pass, I would suggest giving it a try. Like I mentioned, you also had Sniper Elite 4 and the Zombie Army game on Game Pass as well. So if it's something that you really do enjoy, there's a few more other games that you can dive right into. So with it being on Game Pass, definitely check it out, download it, try out the first mission, see if it's something that you're going to enjoy. For me personally, I did enjoy it. But that brings me to the next point of, it's on Game Pass, but for those that it is not on Game Pass or you don't have Game Pass, is this a game I would actually spend my money on? And the answer is no. For me, I really did enjoy the game for what it was, but it's not enough for me to go and spend $60 on a title and only get maybe 10 to 12 hours out of that game. So for me personally, not worth the money, but being on Game Pass, I would definitely try checking it out. So like I mentioned, Sniper Elite 5, fun game. Being on Game Pass was a real clincher for me to go in and dive into this game and see if it was something I would even enjoy. Now, if you're into stealthy games like Splinter Cell and things like this could also scratch that itch for you as well. And if you're unsure of what other games to go play on Xbox, go check out my playlist on what games to play on Xbox, and I'll see you over there.